Hey there Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And if you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am an astrologer and I make videos all about astrology. Okay, so in today's video we're going to be discussing the 5 things that you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius taking place on the 11th of August 2022. So stay tuned. But before we do dive into today's video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and click the bell. And if you're interested in a personal reading, you can visit my website, hannahselsewhere.com. There you can also find my Practical Astrology ebooks and merch. All the links will be in the description box below. I do hope that you find this video to be helpful today. Let's do this. So the first thing you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius taking place on the 11th of August 2022 is that it will oppose the Sun in Leo at 19 degrees, creating the number 1 in numerological terms. 1 representing things like new beginnings, creativity, action, leadership, originality, freedom, independence, and innovation. So there is a fresh start here, meaning that whatever we release during this full moon, perhaps it's to prepare us for what is to come next. Maybe whatever we let go of during this full moon, well, it's what's good for us. It's for our own good. It could be that there is something we need to change if we are to feel energized and alive and confident. We might experience something eye-opening, or our views about a situation might change. Something could just click, or it can feel like a light bulb moment where we feel this surge of energy and excitement. It's our sudden realizations that leave us feeling inspired and hopeful about the future. And when I think back to the 1st of February of this year, when we experienced the new moon in Aquarius, things were pretty chaotic for me. So just touching on my own experience here, I felt like I was rushing and having to get so many things done. I even rushed through my journaling around that time. I just looked back at my journal because I had so much on my to-do list to complete. My 30th birthday was near that time. So my 30th birthday was on the 8th of February. And so with my birthday coming up, I felt excited about it, but then I got sick suddenly and any plans I had for my birthday just fell through. Still, in therapy, things were pretty eye-opening for me. I felt nervous about opening up because I didn't want to sound strange or weird, but because I did, I was able to receive the support that I needed at that time. So try to think back to the new moon in Aquarius 2022. Think about what you were experiencing or reflecting on during that time. So just to clarify, around the 1st of February. Maybe you set new intentions regarding your hopes and wishes for the future, or you came up with some original ideas that had you feeling super excited and exuberant, or it could be that you wanted to change something by breaking free or by doing something different. And so during this full moon in Aquarius, you can see what has materialized since then. Maybe you reap some rewards, okay, or you're reflecting on a few things so you can figure out what the next step is. I'm talking about things to do with your communities, your inventions, your independence and your freedom. Things associated with your humanity and your collective views. Perhaps there's something you want to share with the world, or you want to shake things up. And at the same time, you consider your strength. You consider how you can bring love into the situation, how you can shine and feel cheerful about things, feel good about things, seeing as the sun is in Leo here. So let's say this full moon is taking place in your 11th house. So looking at you, Aries, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reap rewards to do with your group efforts and your contributions, or you might release a certain way of behaving within groups in hopes of changing things for the better. You want to do something differently here. Perhaps you break free even from a group or from a certain collective way of thinking, and you actually decide to reflect more on your freedom and your independence. And at the same time, you consider the joy and happiness you experience when you're being creative, but even just looking at how happy you feel within particular friendships, within particular groups. It could be that your need for change here is so you can do more of the things you love and you enjoy. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 7th house, so looking at you Leo sun, moon and risings. Perhaps during this full moon you reap rewards to do with your relationships and your partnerships, or you might release a certain way of behaving within your relationships in hopes of changing things for the better. You decide to do something differently here. Perhaps you break free from an unbalanced or uncooperative partnership / relationship. Instead, you reflect on your independence and your freedom. Though at the same time, you consider the joy and happiness that you feel just within yourself. You know, it could be that your need for change here is so you can put yourself first within certain situations. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 3rd house, so looking at you Sagittarius sun, moon and risings. Perhaps during this full moon you reap rewards to do with your general discussions and mindset, or you might release a certain way of behaving within your everyday conversations just in hopes of changing things for the better. Here you want to do something differently, right? Perhaps you break free from a certain way of communicating or from a certain way of learning, and you reflect on your independence and your freedom. And at the same time, you consider the joy and happiness you get from traveling or from doing something adventurous. It could be that your need for change in this way is so you can spread your wings and explore just other things, other territories. The second thing you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius is that it will conjunct Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, and both the moon and Saturn are making a square to Mars in Taurus. Okay, so there is a lot of tension here. There's a ton of tension actually during this full moon, because we have a grand cross, T-squares happening between the fixed signs, creating challenges, many challenges. And of course, with fixed signs can be immovable, they can be determined and steady, yes, which is great, but there is often no room for compromise or seeing eye to eye. And so we might feel stuck, or we might be particularly stubborn. Still, with Saturn retrograde conjunct the moon, this is an opportunity for us to reflect seriously on things, to sit with ourselves and really go over what the next step is, what that looks like. It's not enough to have ideas and to think about the next step, but it's important to consider things like, how realistic we're being, how much effort a situation requires of us. Is there an obstacle in our way? Are we having to wait because of a setback or a delay? And if or when we do have to slow down, which is most likely with Saturn making a square to Mars, how do we react? Are we super hard on ourselves? Is it that we think that we'll never make it? Or do we keep persevering? Then again, it could be that you keep pushing, but you don't pivot when you realize something is no longer working. It's this whole attitude of constantly going at the same thing, trying again and again and again, but never getting different results. Then you start to feel tired and irritated and possibly burnt out. You feel frustrated with yourself and you get mad at others, even though it's actually you being mad at yourself because you're not changing something. Perhaps this is showing us that things aren't going to happen at the time we want them to, or things aren't going to happen if we don't change something we're doing. Or maybe it's saying that the things we hope for aren't just going to land on our laps. Things like patience, dedication, and responsibility, they are essential. Yes, it's also good to be disciplined and to be resilient, and perhaps there is also a lesson about endurance and stamina being highlighted here. Though still, I think what's also good to consider is it's this whole notion of, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to change? If you want something to change, if you're done with trying constantly and never getting the results you're looking for, what can you change? Really thinking seriously about these things. Perhaps our insecurities and our fears are triggered because of how slow things feel, or because we're not getting the results we want. Now, if you're a pretty patient and chilled person, maybe you won't feel this as heavily, okay? You won't get as frustrated. But if you're someone like me, who needs things to happen yesterday, you might find things to be slightly more challenging, okay? And this is why being flexible and adaptable is important, as well as thinking of new ways of doing things. And thankfully, Mercury in Virgo will trine Uranus in Taurus during this full moon, so perhaps we can think outside of the box, or we can change the order in which we do things. We can readjust our times and our schedules, and even if it's physically impossible to reorganize things, perhaps there is something about our mindset that we can change. Or there's something about the way we are taking care of ourselves that can change. Essentially, it might feel as if all your duties are piling up, and it can feel like things aren't going according to plan. And if so, maybe we can explore other ways of attending to our goals and our responsibilities and so on. Remember also your emotional security and how there are things you can change there. Remember things like hope and breaking free. So on that note, let's say this full moon is taking place in your 8th house. So looking at you Cancer, Sun, Moon and Risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like intimacy and bonding, or there is something you want to restructure and work on there. You feel like something needs to change. And so maybe communication is key, as well as spending some time with friends. So having a fresh mindset about things instead of worrying and feeling fearful. Maybe you consider what you can readjust or what can be improved. Things might feel slow and you can experience a few setbacks, but with effort and patience and just being able to pivot also, maybe you can work things out. Perhaps a big next step for you involves deepening your commitments with your partner. And so you're having to be realistic about what that looks like. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 4th house, so looking at you Scorpio, Sun, Moon and Risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like your emotional security and your family life, or there is something you want to restructure and work on there, okay? Maybe you want something to change, and so discussing things with your friends or with your partner can be helpful. Maybe your partner can help you think differently about matters, or you can explore something new and exciting together. And at the same time, you consider what can be readjusted and improved regarding your future plans, okay? Things might feel slow, you can experience a few setbacks, but with patience and effort and being able to pivot, maybe you feel a lot more settled. Maybe a big next step for you involves taking on greater responsibilities within the home. And so in this respect, you're having to be realistic about what that looks like. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 12th house, so looking at you Pisces, Sun, Moon and Risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like your inner world and your spiritual values, or there is something you would like to restructure or work on within these areas. Maybe you want to change something about how you do things behind the scenes, or you feel the need to be on your own for a while so you don't have any distractions. Maybe you need to recharge just desperately, and you also consider what can be readjusted and improved within your relationships. Things might feel slow and you can experience a few setbacks, but with effort and patience and being able to pivot, maybe you'll find the inner answers you're looking for. And it could very well be that a big next step for you involves establishing greater boundaries within your life and to be realistic about what that looks like. Well, as realistic as you can be, because it is you we're talking about, Pisces. The third thing you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius is that the moon and sun will square Uranus and Mars in Taurus, creating a T-square. And also remember that Saturn retrograde energy. Okay, so whilst there's a part of us that is reflecting seriously on the next step, okay, we might also experience times when we feel like exploding or recklessly just breaking away from a situation. Let's just say there's a ton of chaotic and conflicting energy during this full moon. We do not know whether we're coming or going, whether we should sit still or move forward. Should we remain where we are within a situation because it feels more stable that way? Or should we follow our desires and our passions, even if they shake up our emotional security, and even though they shake up the emotional security of others? Maybe it's a good idea not to rush in, so we don't get swept away by everything, by the chaos, by the hurricane. Honestly, things just feel so contradictory. I mean, it wouldn't be a full moon in Aquarius if it wasn't. But seriously, we might be questioning our very sanity because of how up in the air everything feels. It's sort of making me think about how one parent says one thing to their child and then the other parent says the complete opposite. Then the child sides with the parent they agree with the most because that parent agrees with what that child wants to do, okay? And so in this way, consider the direction you want to go in, but then also consider all these opposing, options, all these different options, these alternatives. Maybe there are some of you who would rather stick to what you know during this full moon. You have a set way of doing things and you don't care for change. Or maybe there are others of you who feel this need for change. You want to explore alternatives. You want to break free. But don't be surprised if things do not happen the way you would like. Perhaps it's about being open to the unpredictable. And for those of you who don't want to be caught up in the chaos and would rather continue doing things the same way, well, you just might find that the unexpected happens whether you like it or not. All right, so let's say that this full moon is taking place in your 9th house. So looking at you, Gemini, sun, moon, and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like your higher education, your advanced learning, but there's this other part of you that feels like breaking away so you can recharge your batteries. Maybe you're constantly reminded of how chaotic things are in your life at the moment. You know you want to change something about your spiritual life, but you also want your future aspirations to remain structured. Maybe work is just a lot right now and it's hard to just have a minute to properly relax and recharge. It's great that things are, of course, progressing within the realm of expansion and growth and self-discovery for you. But maybe something needs to change so you can feel more at ease. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 5th house. So looking at you, Libra, sun, moon, and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things when it comes to your romantic relationships and your children. But there's this other part of you that feels like breaking away so you can transform. Maybe you feel like something needs to change within your intimate relationships, or you want to reconnect with your deeper emotions and with your sexual feelings just in a whole new way. But things feel pretty chaotic. You know you want to change something about your intimate life, but you also want your love life and your children's lives to remain structured. Maybe you're working through some deep-seated fears regarding your inner security and you've been addressing body concerns. It's great that things are progressing, within the realm of pleasure and enjoyment and exploring your individuality. But maybe something needs to change so you can feel more at ease. The 4th thing you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius is that the moon and sun will square the nodes in Scorpio and Taurus, creating a grand cross between the fixed signs. So things will feel very heavy during this full moon. We can't seem to feel settled and peaceful. Everything is so intense and emotionally explosive. We feel on edge, we might snap at others, They might get angry at us. People might want to start fights with us or be very aggressive, or we might take our confusions out on others. There might be drama and far too much ego. We might feel like things are about us when they are not. And so I think during this full moon, it's important to be an observer. Observe what's going on around you. Observe what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and so on. Things are going to feel chaotic and extreme and volatile, but maybe, just maybe, choosing not to engage in the madness can help us out. Perhaps some things just, they're not our business. Even if we think they are, maybe the best option is to walk away from things that make us feel like we're about to lose our minds. And besides, with so much of this fixed energy going about, there's no way others are going to listen to us if they think they're right and that's final, but then at the same time we're thinking we're right and that's final. No compromise here. Honestly, trying to reach an agreement during this full moon can seem impossible. Of course it's doable, but if you can't get your message across to someone, or someone is trying to aggressively get theirs across to you, maybe it's best to lay low. Just lay low for a little while until things just calm down. And then of course you can address the situation later. Maybe you can revisit that situation when everyone isn't being so stubborn, including yourself. Just thinking about how stubborn I can be. I irritate myself. I can be so annoying. So let's say this full moon is taking place in your first house. So looking at you, Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you want to focus more on yourself. You consider what you want and your goals and so on. And at the same time, perhaps it's a good idea to observe things regarding your home life, your career life, and your relationships. All of these areas are going to be activated for you. But instead of giving into the chaos and the madness, maybe it's best to step back and observe. Of course, you're still going to be caring and thoughtful like you usually are, but if you feel this need to make someone else see your point and to make them understand, things might backfire. And so perhaps the best option is to just let things settle before jumping in. And if you are going to bring something up, be tactful, okay? Think about things, and of course as well, remember to observe, okay? Rather than being reactive. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 10th house. So looking at you, Taurus, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you focus more on your career and your public image. You consider what your accomplishments are and you reflect on the things you wish to accomplish. And at the same time, maybe it's a good idea to observe things regarding your home life, your relationships, and your life path. All of these areas will be activated, they'll be highlighted for you. But instead of giving into any drama or chaos, maybe it's best to observe rather than getting annoyed, and then next thing you know, your performance at work isn't great, it's being affected. Try to remain calm and a bit cool about things. You're still going to be loyal and kind, but if you act overly stubborn, things might not feel the most pleasant or comfortable. Perhaps the best option is to just let things rest for a little bit rather than bulldozing through a situation. And the fifth and final thing you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius taking place on the 11th of August 2022 is that Venus in Leo will quintile Uranus and the North Node in Taurus, and then the Sun in Leo will biquintile Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Great, so we have some beautiful aspects that point towards gifts and talents. They point towards some order and harmony and problem solution. And with both Venus and the Sun being in Leo, maybe it's about us recognizing and valuing our worth. Perhaps some appreciation and applause are in order, or maybe we have something to celebrate. Sure, we might be feeling all this heavy, tense, and serious energy. We might also be experiencing all this very chaotic energy during this full moon, but there's also an opportunity for us to shine and to embrace who we are. We can consider our joy and our happiness. We can uplift ourselves and others, and we can feel confident about our paths, about our destiny, even if some anger is directed towards us along the way. We can put ourselves in the spotlight as we choose to follow what we desire. And we can also come up with solutions to problems regarding all the madness. One solution being choosing ourselves or choosing our inner peace. So, for instance, perhaps we can look deep within ourselves before we react. Or we can listen closely to what our hearts are saying. Or we can focus on love and self-acceptance. Perhaps compassion plays a major role as well. So on that note, let's say this full moon is taking place in your 6th house, so looking at you Virgo, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like your work and your daily habits and your routines. And maybe you feel like something needs to change within these areas, okay? But you might also feel like things are very chaotic. Therefore, perhaps it's beneficial for you to switch off for a bit, relax a bit, to be able to step away from all the busyness. You might decide to do something creative during your alone time, or you choose to spend some quality time with your partner. Maybe you accept that going at a slow and steady pace is good for you. Taking your time is good for you. It's especially good for your mental well-being. So whatever further learning or training you're doing, for example, it's going to take time, and you can appreciate that process and that journey. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 2nd house, so looking at you Capricorn, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps during this full moon, you reflect seriously on things like money and your values, and maybe you feel like something needs to change there, but you might also feel like things are pretty chaotic. Therefore, maybe it's beneficial for you to focus on things you enjoy regarding intimacy and sex and bonding, to be able to step away from all of the money madness. You might decide to even have a heart-to-heart with a friend, or you might do some journaling, for example. Maybe you accept that things are steadily growing within your romantic relationships or within the realm of creativity, so looking at your creative projects. And this gradual growth can lead to greater feelings of appreciation. Okay then, Cosmic Warriors, so that concludes my video on the 5 things you need to know about this full moon in Aquarius taking place on the 11th of August 2022. Please let me know if you found this video to be helpful. I would really appreciate that. And as always, let me know your thoughts and your opinions down below. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And of course, if you would like to see more videos from myself and you have not yet subscribed, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and also give this video a like if you did like it today. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye! Happy full moon!